Today's video is in part a review of this convertible version of the electric Fiat 500, which is an interesting car in its own right. But in addition to that, we wanted to take a look at the market for convertibles in general, what it's doing, because actually it's going through a huge transition. So we're going to look at that and what it means for buyers. To tell this story, our industry analysts at CarGurus UK conducted research into the state of the convertible market and how it's changed over the last 2 decades. What we didn't know was at the same time Fiat was doing its own study into convertibles, but this time related to how driving them made you feel. Specifically, it was scientifically measuring the emotional well-being of drivers, first with the roof up and then with the roof down. It found that roofless motoring increased the sense of happiness felt by drivers by between 6 and 20%, while negative emotions such as frustration and anger fell by 20%. So driving a convertible car is scientifically proven to be good for you, which is good news. What's less good is that our own research at CarGurus UK has shown a significant decline in the availability of new convertibles to buy. So in 2005, there were over 50 new convertible cars available from the UK's 30 biggest car brands. Today, there are just 24 new convertibles available. And what's more, right now in 2023, of the UK's 30 biggest car brands, less than half offer a convertible. Think about it. Brands including Toyota, Nissan, Vauxhall, Honda, Renault, Land Rover, Volvo, MG, all in the past have offered a convertible in some shape or form, but not any longer. And with choice dwindling, so have sales. So last year represented the lowest number of convertibles sold in the UK for 18 years. So what does that mean in terms of actual numbers? Well, in 2004, there were over 94,000 new convertibles sold in the UK, whereas by the end of 2022, only 16,500 have been sold. So why is that? There's not one silver bullet that has caused the slowdown in sales of convertibles, but it's a combination of factors. Number one is think about the arrival of cars like the BMW X3 and the Range Rover Evoque and the Audi Q5. Before that, convertibles were seen as the most stylish, the most fashionable choice. But then all of a sudden along came these very trendy looking posh SUVs. And then all of a sudden, if you wanted to be fashionable, you bought one of those. Range Rover and VW have even tried to combine the appeal of SUVs and convertibles in one package of ultimate desirability, but modest sales suggest it's the ruggedness that people want, not the rooflessness. Then of course there's the shift to electric cars. Now this, remember, is an area where manufacturers don't have a choice. They either shift to electrification or they face crippling fines for missing emissions targets. And so it follows that if you're a manufacturer building a new car these days, you're going to build an electric SUV. Cars like convertibles, well, they're just too niche, and this has only been exacerbated by the fallout from the COVID-19 pandemic. Manufacturers need to play catch up, and convertibles are not the way to do it. There are some brands that have stuck with convertibles though, through thick and thin. Think about Mazda and its MX-5, Porsche with its Boxster, or Jeep with its Wrangler. There are now even some brands that are starting to combine what seem like the most unlikely of partners, roofless motoring and electrification, which brings us back to today's test car, the electric Fiat 500, which, believe it or not, is one of only 4 convertible EVs you can buy today from the UK's top 30 selling brands. The other 3, in case you're wondering, are from Mini, Smart and Abarth, with the Abarth 500e of course being the sportier sister car to this Fiat model. Now, I should point out that Fiat's design doesn't necessarily fit everybody's definition of a classic convertible, which is because while the roof slides all the way back, actually the windows, the B-pillar, the C-pillar, the roof rails, they all stay in place. However, this is in some ways quite neat because it means you can have a fully roofless experience, but actually with this in place, it keeps the buffeting inside to a minimum. And it certainly doesn't harm the car's aesthetic appeal, because the 500 remains one of the most stylish small cars on the road, with some wonderful little nods to its heritage. Okay, let's look at the boot. This is clever. Look, Fiat knows that if you open the boot with the roof like this, it won't open properly, so it automatically lifts the roof up a little bit before you can then access the boot. Right, so 185 litres of space in here, small opening. Obviously this is not the most practical of designs. However, I think given that this is just a small convertible, we can kind of give it a little bit of grace there. And probably the same could be said of the back seats. So I will clamber in here and you will see that they are not the roomiest by any stretch of the imagination, but you can just about get a couple of adults in here if you need. It's a 4-seater, and again, given this is a small convertible, I feel like the fact you get rear seats at all is a bit of a bonus. The dash design has some flair to it, although it's largely finished in hard plastics. We do, however, applaud Fiat for retaining a separate panel for its heater controls rather than burying them in the infotainment system. The driving position in this electric Fiat 500 convertible is much the same as any modern day Fiat 500, which is to say you sit quite upright, quite high. It's not sporty at all, but it is pretty comfortable. Steering wheel adjusts for reach and for height, but in this particular car there's no height adjustment on the seat. And to open and close the roof, you just use these buttons up here, and that can be done at any speed. Fiat's 10.3-inch infotainment screen is slightly laggy but packed with features. Apple CarPlay and Android Auto are included in this screen and on the smaller 7-inch unit in the entry-level model. Less impressive is the screen for the digital dials, which is crammed with arguably too much information. My other gripe is the lack of a reversing camera in this mid-spec Icon trim. Now ordinarily in a car this small I would say that such features aren't that important. However, when you lower the roof in this like we have now, it completely blocks the view out of the back, so parking really just becomes guesswork. Unlike the Abarth 500e, there's no fake exhaust sound in this Fiat version. Instead, at low speeds, the only noise you get is a tiny electronically generated bit of noise to indicate to pedestrians that there's a car there. While at higher speeds, there is a bit of tyre and wind noise, but it's certainly not terrible, even with the roof down. In terms of performance, again, this car is a bit like the Abarth version in that it doesn't give you this great thump of power all in one go. Now, admittedly, the Fiat version only has 117 horsepower, so it's only so quick it's going to be, but it's delivered in a really nice linear fashion. It also rides better than you might expect, traversing bumpy roads with far more composure than we've seen from previous Fiat 500s. The result is that while the 500 retains some cheekiness about the way it drives, it's also a lot more grown up, a lot more sophisticated. It feels a bit less like a roller skate like old 500 used to, and more like a normal car. But it still has a lot of charm. I think Fiat's done a really nice job with it. I also like that the driving modes feel very different. So if you leave it in normal mode, there's no brake regen at all, so it feels much more like a conventional car. But use the switch here to put it into range mode, and you get one pedal driving. It's a bit like a BMW i3 in that regard. So whether you like your car to drive like a normal car or like a fully electric brake regen car, the 500's got you covered. When it comes to range, the electric 500 convertible can extract a WLTP claimed 188-mile range from its 42 kilowatt-hour battery, which can be recharged in 6.5 hours from a 7 kilowatt home wall box, or rapid charge at up to 85 kilowatts, in which case a 0 to 80% charge takes around 35 minutes. While this car's range might be a bit limited, I think that's okay in the context of what it is. Because if you're going to be doing huge mileages, then you probably don't really want a tiny car with a fabric roof. No, where the 500 convertible excels is in making everyday journeys feel that bit more special. It's just got so much charm, character, and all combined with the freedom of open-air motoring. It also shows that electric cars and convertibles can work in harmony, and perhaps more importantly than that, that the market for convertibles, while down, is certainly not out just yet. Would you consider a convertible Fiat 500? If so, be sure to head to cargurus.co.uk to find lots of great deals from top-rated dealers. And as ever, please do like this video and subscribe to the CarGurus UK YouTube channel.